because the girls were directly able to say for themselves, not through me or any other organization, they were able to reflect the voices of the girls, to participate in their future development and say what it is their priorities. So this time, the girls themselves from the program elected these two girls to represent them. And I'm very pleased to say that they're excellent speakers. They have worked on a memorandum of priorities with the 16 girls and the counties to come up with a memorandum of that they presented to the First Lady to say what are the priorities for them in the next 15 years.
I'm happy that you're talking about memorandum and the question of priorities, and let's now hear it from Jacinta and Antonina. Jacinta, beginning with you, what are those key priorities, especially contained in the memorandum, that you want as a country, for us as a country to achieve, even as we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals now?
Okay, some of these issues contained in the memorandum. There were the issue of the gender equality and the girls' education. Yeah, so what we wanted the First Lady to communicate with the people in the government so that they can work together to bring about gender equality in our country.
So the question of gender equality is key. Antonina, do you have any other issue that you think should be addressed?
In the memorandum, the main issue was safety. You know, safety is everything and it's broad. If a girl is safe, she cannot be sexually assaulted, she cannot be injured. Even going to school, it will be easy, and education will really be good to her. And then the other thing is participation and empowerment. You know, as youths, we have to participate in decision making, in ensuring that the community and the world grows. Because just look at it in that you are in a community and there is something happening, as in they're making decisions for you and you are not participating, and it's known to youths. If you are making decisions for them and they don't like it, it's obvious that they'll really, they'll not be very happy with you, and they can do anything, even going up to committing suicide. Then in empowerment, we have learned that girls who are not empowered, they can really be drawn off by people, especially using money. Because if, for example, I don't know that this man can talk to me and make me have sex with him, I don't know that I should control the relationship between a man and a female, between a male and a female. Yeah, somehow. As in, if I'm not empowered, I don't know more about sexual diseases. I do not know that indecent assault is a form of sexual abuse. I can really go into trap, and that results to regretting after the outcome of the act.
Of course, I'll be wanting you to explain how you are doing this, because this is more of advocacy. But let me ask you a question that one will want to ask if he was or she was talking to you. You are students.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is more of advocacy. One will ask the question, how do you balance studies and advocacy? Because one may fear that the two may be in conflict with one another.
To me, I as Antonina, I do advocacy in school and community. When we go to school, St. Mary's Luak Girls is a good school and provides opportunity and time to girls who have something good to encourage the girls. For example, now in our school, if you have a good idea like clubs, as for me when I came from Nairobi, workshop for advocacy, I thought it twice to have advocacy club in our school. So every week, every Thursday, at around 4:30, it's time for clubs. So for me, I have some members in advocacy club. I teach them because Luak contains many people from different places, Mombasa, Kisumu. So if I educate one, I'm sure she will go and educate the others. So that's how I'm doing advocacy in school. And sometimes I can write a speech about advocacy, then I present it on parade. Doing that, I'm also making teachers know about girls, about advocacy. Now in community, I do request to go to social events like the Day of the African Child.
That's during holidays?
Yeah. Then I'm given opportunity to speak. I speak with the people because it's a community event. So people come, we have stakeholders, we have just regular citizens, we have children. So in community events, I do speak in English and Kiswahili and mother tongue so that everyone gets.
To understand and break that communication barrier. Is it the same for you, Jacinta?
Yes, as for me, in Moi Girls, as I like what Antonina said, we have a lot of time at school, so you can balance your studies, and that's same as the advocacy. So there was a time that these students were asking me how they can join the advocacy group. And you know, when I presented this to and I asked the Plan International what I can tell these students, they told me we can form our own advocacy group at school. And when we went back to school, I actually did the same. And during during games time, most of the time we can spend just a little time games, and then we have our meeting during that time. And again, there is during free time, the club meeting that she was talking about, we also have our free time during that time. Yes, so we can manage that.
You can manage that. You have a way of balancing it. Carol, the question of Millennium Development Goals, as we head to New York this week, we are now shifting gears. We're now talking about sustainable development goals. We're now talking about justice. We talk about gender and all those kind of things. But before we shift gears, the question will be, do you think as a country, that is Kenya, that we achieved most of the Millennium Development Goals, and even as we cross over, you cross over with pride as a country?
Definitely, Kenya has come an awful long way through meeting some of the MDGs. Some of those goals are a long way off, and there's so much more to do. And I think both in Kenya and globally, it's a very mixed picture. One of the things that we don't have from the MDGs is exact ability to evaluate and make sure that we've got the right statistics. And this is something going forward that we now are able to do much better as a global community, which is really monitor the outcomes of the development goals. But definitely, I think there's been so much in terms of reduction of poverty since 1990. We have forms maybe half of the developing world, the numbers have come down to under 1 billion people who are in extreme poverty. So, I mean, as we see success, we're also seeing the other side of the coin, that there's far too many people still living in extreme poverty situation, those going hungry as well. Again, the numbers have come down, but still it's huge amounts, millions of people that around the world and in Kenya are still going hungry. So going forwards, we really have to take the successes of what was achieved in the MDGs and not stop there. And I think that that is one of our lessons, that now we're not saying to reduce, we're actually saying to eradicate. And also when we look at gender parity and gender equality, there are definite strides that have been made. And I think some of the legislation that we have here in Kenya, when the girls are talking about early marriage, when the girls are talking about female genital mutilation and cutting, there is actually legislation. But again, numbers have come down, but those practices still exist. Like 1 in 8 girls are married as children before the age of 18 here in Kenya. So we still have a long way to go, including in maternal mortality, where again numbers came down, but too many women are still dying in childbirth for no reason at all. And those reasons are really to make sure that there is proper health care for all. So I think that we must look at the successes, including being able to have access to clean water. That again was a success. But unfortunately, in terms of sanitation, the MDGs were nowhere near their target, both here, I think, and also globally. So let's take the successes, let's look forward at hope to be able to say, well, we've done already a lot, but we haven't done enough. And that is where the SDGs must take forward the agenda. And also look at it, the goal goals, the development goals, very holistically. And that's when I was talking about economic opportunity. I was also looking at climate change and the world's seas and the world's land, which is facing such degradation. And if we don't look after our land, if we don't look after our seas, we're not going to meet the targets of reducing all forms of hunger.
And I want us to talk about gender at one point, because it's a current topic, it's a national issue, especially the question of how do we implement. And I want to believe you're talking to Jacinta and Antonina and other girls, the 16 you're talking about. But let me ask you an interesting question, Jacinta and Antonina, because yesterday on Family Matters, this is what we were talking about. Do we give our teens condoms, for example, the question of premarital sex, the question of early marriage, some of the very interesting issues you are raising. But as a Christian, when you go out to evangelize, one of the things you encounter is you are shouted down, because the people will become somehow combative and such. And as you do this kind of, empowering of your peers in schools at community level, what are some of the challenges? How adaptive or how accommodative are your views or ideas among your peers? Because obviously that those who will tell you off, they will dismiss you and say, there's nothing you're telling me. Cases of early pregnancy, for example, are still rampant. Beginning with you, Antonina. Okay,
on the issue of giving youths condom, I don't think if it's good, because if you give me the condom and I've never had sex, I'll be tempted to use it. I don't think if it's good, because it's like you are encouraging the practice, as long as whether you use it or not, now that's your problem. As in, I don't think if it's good, but I think parents have a task to do. They'll have to sit down with their youths. They should have a one-to-one talk. As in, for example, I am a parent and Jacinta is the student. I'm talking to Jacinta. Jacinta, I want to talk to you about this. Do you know this? Then I tell her that just education about sex, but tell her what are the outcomes, especially negative. Tell her what she will achieve when she grows up and becomes a woman, without engaging herself in sex, and also educate her to have her self-integrity and self-esteem, respect herself as a girl. I wouldn't like any man to go into me. I'm still a student. Yeah.
The question of when you doing this kind of empowerment, especially among your peers, you're at the community level, where the question of cultural beliefs, the communities where a young lady like you or a young girl like you will not be allowed to speak to this kind of matters, especially to the elderly or your peers. How do you try and avoid those kind of challenges when you are doing this kind of empowerment program, Jacinta?
Once you're doing this advocacy thing, we have to be ready for anything. I know most of them would not like us talking about early marriages. Some of them will even look down on us and say, what are they talking about? Like in my community, I can't stand. Like I'm from Kilifi County, but at some point, because my mom lives in Makueni County, I can't speak about this, because they will be saying like, this girl was just here the other day. How come she's coming here telling us that we should not get married? I don't know, the issue of early marriages. I'm even ashamed of that. But I just try my best. I gain the confidence and the courage to talk about it, although they are against it. So once we're doing this thing, we have to be ready for anything, no matter what challenges come across. Because in everything you come, you want, because I want to advocate for the girls, I must be ready for these challenges.
And the consequences may be. And so that's the question, Carol. As you mentor these teens, as you mentor these little ones, the 16 or so, do you also take into consideration the challenges that are likely to face? Because this is definitely not going to be an easy walk in the park.
Advocacy isn't. When you're wanting to change the status quo, it's never easy. And I think that is why it's a program. There's no quick wins, let's say. It takes time to change attitudes. Like we have here in Kenya, and I was talking about, child marriage is illegal, as is FGM. So you can actually introduce the legislation, but then you have to get the population to embrace that legislation. It's not one thing or another. It's putting everything together. And I think there are a lot of challenges. I think definitely it can be seen as very disrespectful for when young women or anybody in the community is challenging practices that have gone on and on and on. But I think now we can't keep silent. We have to actually look at human rights. We have to look at girls' rights. We know that if you want a strong society, that girls have to have an education, they have to reach equality with, and be able to stay in school just as much as their brothers, their friends, their nephews, and so on, the family. So I think that we do, the girls themselves want to speak out. So many people want to speak out to say, we need to stay in school. We need an education. If we have an education, we can bring so much more to the community, to the children that we will have in the future, and make Kenya a much stronger society. So there will be backlash always, but I think the issue is really so many multi-layered. It's not just a matter for the girls to be doing advocacy, and of course we're assisting them to be able to deal with different people's reactions and obviously always be respectful of the community and their families. But it's also, for instance, as I think the girls were just talking about, you start at the very beginning with very good parenting skills. So Plan here in Kenya has a big focus on early childhood development, and through our ECCD centers, working with the different counties, we're very much focused on ensuring that parents are involved in the programs. I know a lot of parents, when I go to communities, they talk about different problems, the girls running off to discotheques, or in Kilifi, I know, by the beach, getting involved in early sex and going off with boda riders or whoever. But I think, again, as Antonina has said, you really have to start at the basics. The parents really have to take on the responsibility of good parenting, good education, followed through in school by the same. And I think building up from an early age, involving the parents, involving the communities, involving the teachers, I think we will reach that level of gender equality, which is growing, but still there is too much of a divide here in Kenya and also in many parts of the world.
And now that you talk about gender, Antonina and Jacinta, in this country, we have had debates about the question of gender representation. How do you ensure, for example, more women represent you in Parliament, be it in the Senate or in the National Assembly? And this week, or later this week, you'll be traveling to New York. Assuming Jacinta and Antonina, you went to New York and you met President Barack Obama, and one of the questions President Obama asked you, how do you achieve gender parity in Kenya? How are you going to respond to him, Jacinta?
Okay, I would respond to him that by getting to educate the public that it is very important to promote gender equality, so that we work together to bring this country of ours to some place that we develop our own country by promoting the gender equality. So what we should be doing is to educate them on how it is good to bring about gender equality in our own country. Yes.
The same will be your view?
To me, as long as you're talking about gender equality, we have to make the male gender understand that we are not empowering girls to overtake them, but we are empowering girls to be at the same level with the men. Then, as a student, I've been participating in the National Assembly and the County Assembly. Our role to ensure that there is gender equality, that is 50-50 representation. Whenever we are in an event involving children, we do really inquire whether the number of the male and the female are 50-50 ratio. That's how we ensure gender equality. Yeah.
And so far, are you happy with the manner, the question of gender principle? Because these are issues that you're keenly following is being implemented in the country.
Yeah, gender equality should be there, because as long as I'm a woman, I'm a lady, I can still do what a man can do. And mark you, an educated and empowered girl, woman, in a household, that is light, and that is light to the community. And that is an assurance of a better future You know, we girls, when we are empowered, for example, Honorable Christine, the women representative of Siaya, you see, she's an empowered woman and she can speak. When we little girls see that there is a powerful woman there, we are inspired. That's why I'm really encouraging and supporting gender inequality, telling the world that we can. I can speak, I can think, I can even overtake men. Now why do you degrade the female gender? Yeah.
And so as we bring this to an end, because what a way to do it, Carol, what should we expect in New York? Because you're leading a delegation there as Plan International. You've been working with these young girls, trying to mentor them, trying to ensure that what are you going to do there? And especially, what should we expect from this delegation in New York later this week?
Well, I think we can expect the adoption of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, taking us forward to 2030, and for us to, as a country, come back and really look at the rollout. We do not want these goals just to be goals. We want to have a very clear implementation plan and a monitoring plan so we can actually mark and benchmark the progress as we go through the next 15 years. For planners, we've spoken about participation, and because I am a girl campaign, which Plan does run, we really want the participation of the girls. Jacinta and Antonina are not only going to be joined by 4 other countries that we're working with the same project in Plan, but they're going to be together with hundreds of young girls and children from all around the world who are doing exactly the same. They're raising their voices directly to the world leaders to say what they expect. So I think that us going to New York, we've been working on the Sustainable Development Goals and providing input as planned for the last 2 years or so. So there's been many meetings, and it's been quite inclusive in terms of the development of the agenda. And that is something that, is a really big step forward. But with the girls, they will have opportunity to mix with other girls, to see what their peers around the world are saying. But they will have opportunities to meet with, hopefully, our own government here in Kenya, but also governments that will be there as well, to really make their voices heard, so that directly it's the girls that are saying what their expectations are. And their expectations are not from going to New York. It's really from the adoption of the SDGs and what we're going to do in the next 15 years to make sure everybody is included in the development and everybody is being able to improve their lives.
Then to add on that.
Yes, as we bring this to an end, of course, your expectations from
Yeah,
you?
according to me, as long as I'm going to New York, my home country is Kenya, and that's where I'm supposed to develop. I'd like to encourage the county government. Now they should take up the role from the global and the National Assembly and the national meetings, that is. They shouldn't just leave it to be a tour to New York. I think they should set aside some money just for the girls in terms of sanitary towels, in terms of bursary disbursements, in terms of checking whether there is fair division of labor, in terms of doing away with delayed justice, especially in times of defilement. I just want to encourage the county assembly then to go down into the basics, the family. They'll have to empower the community, because we can't grow because the community are the small groups that make change. Let the county assembly set aside some money to empower the community, just to lift girls. Let's keep the country going. Yeah.
And Jacinta, as we bring this to an end?
Yeah, my expectations as I go to New York is that I will get to know the issues that the girls in other parts of the countries, like the Pakistan, what are some of the issues the girls are facing and what their government are doing.
Thank you very much for getting time to be with us. I want to give you 30 seconds, Jacinta, and Antonina 30 seconds as we bring this to an end, because I know the teacher strike is ongoing. What is your view, especially when, because we've not been learning, especially those in public schools, for the last 3 weeks now? We're talking about this being the 4th week. What will be your last message to the government, say, with respect to teacher strike?
Okay, what I have to say to the government, according to the teacher strike, is that the teachers and the government, they have to come to a solution and end this, because in the end, we are the ones who are suffering. Like most of the schools have not covered the syllabus. Therefore, it means we have to do it ourselves. And you know, we have to get the knowledge from the teachers. They have to teach us so that we get to cover the syllabus. Of course, when we are at home, most of us may read, others may not, because you know you have a little limited time for you to study. At home, we have a lot of things to do. You have to wash the utensils, to clean the house and all that. So we may not have enough time to cover the syllabus ourselves. So they have to come to an agreement. They have to come to a solution so that they end this strike and that we go back to school, because we need to learn. Yes.
And Antonino?
Yeah, just as Jacinta has said, the two groups have to come to an agreement, because we are the next generation. We are the light to the world. And you know, education is a continuous system. If it goes without any break, it's really successful. But now you find in a situation like this, there has been a break in the education flow. So you find that especially Form 3s are affected, because we are supposed to go to the next class, the final class, when we are already through the syllabus. But now that we are at home, we can't go on with the syllabus. And when students are in school, you can go very well with the syllabus, in that the school has its own arrangement. I really wish these two groups to come together once again, so that we go back to school.
From where I sit, I always judge you're going to be county women reps one of these fine days, by the way you are talking. But thank you very much for getting time to speak to us.
Thank you too.
Carol Sharman and Antonina and Jacinta, we wish you well as you travel to New York. Ensure that you represent us well, even as we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Hopefully they'll be adopted and we cross over from Millennium Development Goals. And that's why we bring this discussion to an end. But the program Good Morning Kenya continues. Becky Mwalimu is up next with the next interview. Stay tuned.